So continue with the program. Thank you all for introductions. I hope that you've managed to get to know each other and what you're working on. Hopefully at LQ, you can also provide some connections and partnerships going forward. Okay, yeah, so session today, building communities, building your community. I want to sort of like maybe reflect around the communities that you're working on and those who are looking into building aspiring communities. So introducing Buyu, who is, I think I'll just not by title, but looking at the fact that I think having seen the amount of work that I'll just put them as with the team that works at, which is now Meta Developer Circle, what they have built and what they've grown from start to now, I think has been an amazing journey to follow, with the impact that they've really done around and the contribution that they've done, especially on the developer side. So it was interesting that having them or having him to speak around how from the inception to where it is now, I think that's a very good story to tell. And also looking at the growth and the impact that they've done so far, I think has been very amazing. So I'm very, very curious as well to see and learn from this experience. And hopefully that maybe we can get some insight from Buyu on this topic. So Buyu, I'll hand over to you, and you'll be the best to introduce yourself and the other things as well that you do aside from Meta developer, leading the Meta, or being a lead, one of the leads for Meta. I don't know. I think I'll just go with Facebook Circle. Yeah, this is all confusing for me. But yeah, you can proceed and tell us about your story.
Cool. Thanks, George. Let me just get my slides up and running. Let me know when you can all see them.
Yes, we can.
All right, cool. Thanks, George, for this opportunity to just share some of the lessons that we've learned building developer circles Lusaka over the last, I think now should be 5 years? Yeah, 5 years. Yeah, so who am I? So this is the agenda. So just talk about the history of the community, culture, as well as goals, engagement, partnerships, and then questions. So before I begin, let me just introduce myself. For those, I know only a few people here may not know me. So my name is Buyu Makai. I'm a software engineer at Chipakash. Chipakash is a fintech offering peer-to-peer financial services, as well as investment services like crypto and stocks. We're currently available in like 9 countries, spanning the US, Europe, and Africa. Outside of that, I'm also one of the original members of the Developer Circles Lusaka lead team. If you need to contact me, reach out to me on Twitter. So what are we? Yeah, let me just get into the mix of things. So yeah, what is Developer Circles Lusaka? So Developer Circles Lusaka is a community for all tech enthusiasts. The aim is to connect, share, connect like-minded people together so that they can share ideas and opportunities. The community was established in 2017, I think that's August. And from that time, we've grown from 0 to about currently 3,600 members. That's on the Facebook group. We've hosted over 80 plus physical and online meetups throughout that period. And out of those, 8 have been hackathons. So how the idea of the community came through. Really, it was like out of the ordinary. So I remember because I used to work at Bongo, I was seated doing my job, and then Lukonga just comes to me and says, hey, so Facebook has got this program and they would like to have it, like have a chapter in Lusaka. And I was like, oh, sure, what is it about? And it's like, okay, let's just have a conversation with them. I'll send you a calendar invite. So eventually gets into a meeting with this very, very cool, jovial guy, and he's like, oh, let's do it. And eventually we established ourselves. So the mission of the community has always been about creating that environment where developers can connect with other like-minded people, find opportunities. And throughout the last 5 years, there's been quite an amazing rate of growth, not just in terms of the member activities, but also like the level of developer career growth. We've seen people who literally like didn't know anything about certain technologies. They would come up, would introduce them to those through the physical meetups. And then in the end, right now, as I can speak to a good number of them who are working as actual software engineers in various organizations. So this community, I've been running it with my 2 friends. I think Pendo is on a call. I saw Cynthia earlier, but I think she had something else to do. So Pendo, myself, and Cynthia have been running that community, and it's been a wonderful experience. For me personally, it's like an opportunity that's given me to sort of like grow not just as a person, but also as a developer. I've met some of my current some of the opportunities that I've enjoyed, a direct effect or a direct product of being part of this community. So it gives me pleasure to sort of like take you through some of the things that we sort of like had, some of the best practices that we've seen or experienced managing this community. And I'll just take you through them. So since the topic of discussion is building your community, so I would like this talk to sort of like come from a lens of, you are someone who's thinking of starting up a community. Like, what are some of the checklists that you need to consider? So before everything else, before you have your first meetup, one of the things that you need to consider is, the first thing that you need to consider is your mission. You may ask, why is that important? So the mission of the community is sort of like your compass or your map. It's the one that's going to define sort of like the constraints within which you operate and how you measure your impact. So for us as Developer Circus Lusaka, we were fortunate enough to come from like the Developer Circus umbrella. So there was already like an existing mission statement, and which is create active communities for any developer around the world to access information, share knowledge, and collaborate with other developers. So we had that mission. Now, for you as someone who's considering building a community, you need to define your mission. What drives your community? What drives your community? What are you aiming to achieve? And then after that, you then share that mission with I guess the first initial members. So it's very important to have that defined. So once you've defined your mission, right? You have your North Star. The next thing that is important for you to consider is building your team, because again, community in its essence is about people. Like it's not a one-man show. So how do you pick the people that gets to help you move forward or achieve some of the goals or the mission that you've set forth? And these are some of the things that you need to consider, especially when you're looking out for team members. So the first one is you need to look out for people that are team players. It's I cannot stress how important this is, because again, the communities that you're going to work with people, right? And you need people within your team that can easily work with other people that have that collective mindset. Like whatever we're doing here is not just for individual benefits. It's a collective, and we need to work together. You also need to consider people that are honors. And honors is not really in the sense that, oh, this is mine, but more like whatever responsibility that is given to them, they will ensure that they get it done, and they will take responsibility. So there's been so many instances where, within the team, I've seen that really come across. I think the best example for me was like in 2020, which was like a crazy year for everyone. It kind of really affected our community in terms of like what we were able to do. So when the new year came in, one of our leads, and I can safely mention her, like Pendo just took charge, like from the ashes of 2020. She just took charge of the community and owned every aspect of it, as the rest of us who were dealing with like personal work related responsibilities. So that sense of, oh yes, I do understand that my friends cannot be available at this particular point, and I'm not going to say, oh yeah, these guys are not available, so if they're not doing their part, I'm also not going to do my part. But just taking it up and saying, okay, I'm going to own this. This is mine, and I'm going to carry it forward. And once everyone is able to come back and participate, we will move forward. So it's very important to have people within your team that have that. The other aspect is empathy or empathetic. You need to look out for people that are empathetic, because again, you are going to deal with a lot of people, right? And community management exposes you to like people that come from various backgrounds. So I think if everyone sees everyone through that lens of, oh, let me be more empathetic towards people or the community members, it really helps out. There are cases where people are asking you for various things. There's all these requests and all of that, and then in the end, you're like, oh, I'm a human being as well. Like I have got my other things, my other stuff, and sometimes it's so easy for you to like get frustrated. But as long as you are seeing it from that lens of just empathy, you're being empathetic towards your community members, it really goes a long way. And so, yeah, that's really one of the cardinal characteristics that you need to consider when you're looking out for team members. The last point on this is listeners. This is something that I've also had to just personally learn how it's important to be a listener. So most times when you are a lead, when you're given the opportunity to be a lead, the first idea that comes out is like, oh, I'm going to be the one who's doing all the, yes, you get to do all the presentations and talk and all of that stuff, but it's so easy to forget to, listen to your community. Like, because again, the community is a living and breathing thing, right? It responds to stimuli, right? By that I mean, if you are hosting certain events that are not in line with what the community wants, then it's so easy to lose people. So you need a strong team of listeners, people that are willing to, reduce themselves in conversations and actually hear what the other person is saying, and then learn from that. So yeah, these are some of the most important considerations when you're building a team. So now that you've built your team, right? What's next? So defining your culture. Culture is, I like to believe culture is a subset of your mission, right? And it governs the day-to-day interactions within the community, right? Again, because you're dealing with people, right? And people are coming in from various backgrounds. You need to define a culture that allows them to behave in a way that allows the community to be conducive for everyone. So what are some of those considerations when it comes to culture? In terms of like a pillars of culture, some of the things that we were really we're strong on is being welcoming, right? So being welcoming, again, the community is open to everyone, like people from various backgrounds. So you need to create an environment, or your culture should ensure that anyone can easily walk up and attend your meetups and they'll feel welcome. Tech is one of those industries where there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of making it inclusive. So it's things like ensuring that the language that is used is a welcoming language. It's a welcoming language, right? And also, you need to have a culture that encourages collaboration. Again, everything thrives when people come together, and that's especially like communities. Communities thrive when people come together and they can work on solutions and build together. So there's need for a culture that encourages a lot of collaboration. The third point on this is celebrating achievements. So again, the community really needs to establish this sense of every person's achievement is an addition to the value, or to it's sort of like pushes the mission of the community. So as a lead, you need to ensure that you create a culture where you celebrate others. If someone has built something, highlight them, showcase what they've done. One of the things that we used to do is, because often people would share the good news, maybe on LinkedIn and all of that, say, oh, I've joined this company, la 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 la. We would, with permission, would, share that news on the group, because for us as Developer Circle, our main channel of interaction was Facebook. So would, just take a screenshot, share that information, say, oh, congratulations, maybe Harry on this, la 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 la. And people would chime in and celebrate that person. And in the end, there was that sense of we're winning together. So it's very important that this is one of the pillars that you consider when building your culture. The culture of sharing opportunities. So again, community. So you need to create a culture of sharing opportunities, because so many people are looking for them, right? So for example, if someone reaches out to you and maybe, or anyone within the community, right? And they're looking for a particular developer, make sure that people know that there's that opportunity, right? Instead of just holding on to that information, just share. Yeah. So those are some of the considerations when it comes to like defining the culture of your community that you've built. So we've talked about the mission. We've talked about the culture, and we've talked about building the team. So like anything in life, right? Like anything in life, you need to have goals, right? Yes, the mission is the overall sort of like guiding principle, but then how do you measure the success of your community, right? What are the key metrics that you're going to consider that your community is thriving? Or what are the key metrics that you need to consider to measure the health of your community? So these are some of the goals the goals that within our community developer circles in Lusaka wish to, or we still look at when it comes to measuring this, you know, the success or the health of the community. And one of them is meetup frequencies, right? So again, meetups is one of the most, it's the best way to engage people, to engage the community. So if you're meeting as frequently as possible, it really helps out to ensure that, first of all, people always have your community in mind, to say, oh, if I need anything, there's that community that I can reach out because they're constantly active. At any given point, if your frequency of activity goes down, it's easy for people to say, that thing doesn't exist anymore. And this is something that we've seen, you know, when 2020 hit us, especially the last part of it. You know, I would get questions like, are you guys still around? Are you guys still, you know, all of that. And in the end, it really put this idea that, oh yeah, the DevC is done. But so meetup frequency is really one of the good indicators, and you should set up it as one of your goals to ensure that maybe, like in our case, we had like make sure that we average. Our goal was we average at least 3 meetups within a month, or 2, or even 1, considering factors like people's availability and also speakers. The second one is attendance numbers, right? So again, you need people to be at the meetups, right? So you need to pay particular attention that you are hitting your attendance goals. Because again, organizing a meetup is not just offline, is resource intensive in terms of people's time and all. So you need to have that, you need to have people in attendance. So this is one of the considerations when you're setting out your goals for your community. The other thing is online engagement. Again, this may be unique to us. This may sound unique to us, but I think this cuts across not just the community aspect, but also like in various industries. You need to have targets and goals for what's your minimum online engagement rate. For us, we were fortunate enough to utilize the Facebook platform, and through the group feature, you had like analytics, right? So these, based on the engagement rate, they would use that data to sort of like map or think around what things we need to do, whether we need to increase like posting, sharing things, and all of that. So it's one of those goals or targets that we would measure our community success on. Yeah. So now that you've defined your targets and your goals, what's next? Let me just take some water. Oh, it's juice, Francis. Okay, so now that you have defined your goals and everything, you need to define your strategy for engagement. So what do I mean by this? You need to define what channels you use to engage with the community. Yes, there's the offline and the online aspect. So are you going to use Facebook for your community's online engagement? Oh, thank you, Rhoda. Yeah, are you going to use Facebook as a tool for your online engagement? Are you going to use Twitter for offline engagement? Are you going to focus mostly on meetups or hackathons? You know, all of that. But one thing that we found is like a mix and match of all of this has been the perfect blend for our community. At first, we had like dedicated channels like on Twitter, but then in the end, it kind of like became a little bit tedious managing, so many so many channels. So we just focused on Facebook, and if we to like share any information relating to like an event that's coming, would do it on our personal Twitter handles. So let me now go a little bit more into each of this. So for online, for online engagement, again, what's your main channel of engagement? Once you've chosen Facebook, Twitter, or WhatsApp for those that use WhatsApp group, what are those other things that you need to consider to say this group is working, or how do you manage that space, right? So one thing that we've seen is on the online side, it's posting engaging content. How do you create a strategy? You need to create a strategy that ensures that all the content that you share is useful to the community, right? To the community. But again, you need to, and you need to post frequently, but ensuring that you don't spam people, because it's so easy to sort of like, you need to like, balance in the act between being active and ensuring that you're not sending crazy notifications to people. Depending on the online tool that you've used to engage with your community, like I said, you can use the analytics feature to sort of like come up with how you're going to share like your content strategy, right? So funny thing is that one interesting thing is that when we were considering what after the pandemic, and it was during that period where everyone is like indoors. I remember it was that time where some of us used to go with like gloves and everything to ShopRite. So lots of people were indoors, right? And then we were trying to think of what's the best possible time to have an online meetup, right? Ideally, in the offline setup, we had, what worked for us was, Saturday around 10. It was like a perfect time. We would have like crazy numbers of people coming in. But then how do you decide on an online event? Like, what's the perfect time? So we were lucky enough to have like an analytics feature on the group, and it was able to show us when the group was most active. And it was around Saturday, 17 hours to 18 hours. So through that, we were able to use to say, okay, we're going to have our events, our online events during this time, because this is when there's like peak engagement. And it really, really worked. We would like get quite a lot of people joining within that time slot. So yeah, on the online space, need to consider using analytics to sort of like drive engagement. Yeah. The other thing that needs to be taken or considered is abuse. So again, like with any online platform right now, one of the issues that's there is how do you protect people from abuse, right? And so on our end, what we did was, again, utilizing the Facebook group, we when do you have the community and also we were actively our guidelines are frequently offline, offline really help man. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
I didn't get
Can
you.
you hear me? Okay, thank you. Yes. Yeah, we had to like monitor for abuse within the online community. So the online part has been sorted out. What's next to consider? Sorry. Your offline engagement. So some of the things that you need to take care of or look at is, first of all, meetup structure. So every time you are thinking of like a meetup, like what's the structure of the meetup? What are you talking about? Who are the speakers? Is this meetup part of a series? Or is this just a once-off meetup? Who's the target audience? And all of that. So by having that within your mindset, it helps you in terms of like organizing things like organizing yourself, and how you also like raise awareness around that event, as well as expectations. Because some of the things that would happen is, and I think this one I'm about to say leads to point two, is that sometimes you just, oh yeah, because there's this technology or this person wants to speak, let's have a meetup, and you organize, but then you find that maybe the topic is not relevant to the community, and therefore, or maybe the topic, for example, like it's a little bit too advanced, and the people that come in don't find it useful, and then you find within the duration of the meetup, people start going out and all of that. So you need to consider the structure of the meetup, as well as whether the topic is relevant to your target audience. You also need to consider time and location. Again, as I said in the engagements analysis, or the online engagement, knowing when is the best time slot for your meetups really helps, because in the end, you want people to be there. You want people to be on time. You want your speakers to be on time. Yeah, and also the location. It's not every event space that you are given that works, simply because, you would want, because again, this goes back to knowing your audience, or your members, right? What's the average? What are the average, like maybe socio-economic fact, like what's the socio-economic background of the average member within your community, right? If you say you're going to have an event, say, I don't know, maybe no hate on Mika, so Mika Convention Center, right? Because they gave you space. But if that's almost out on the outskirts of Lusaka, so you find that if most of the members that come to your event are coming in like from these other side of town, it's pretty expensive to go to such a venue, right? So those are some of the considerations that you need to put in when you're building your offline engagement. The other one is advance notice. And I know, looking at this point, we were actually very guilty of sometimes putting up events that are like within like a few days, you announce that you're having this event. But it's important to give your community advance. Yeah, it's important to give your community like an advance notice to say, hey, we're having an event maybe in the next 2 weeks, and this is the topic and all of that. So people plan out what they're going to do, plan out their schedules and all of that. So once you've done all of this, the next thing is to track RSVPs. The sad part is, okay, let me not focus on the sad part. So like for us, we're fortunate enough to be always given like a small budget for every event that we run. So we needed a way to always figure out, to know how many people we're going to expect, right, for such and such a meetup. So one way that we used to do is just like through allowing people to RSVP, and And I think for certain meetups would literally have like slots, like limited slots, right? To say, okay, based on maybe the quality or the content of the person who's coming, will say, this is a limited space event. We're not going above any of this. So it's first come, first serve. So it really, really helped us to know how many people are coming, so that when we're going to buy things like snacks or we're making t-shirts, we could know how many will be allocated for that. So very, very important. So there's always like a margin of error. You may find like 5 people. So that's why it's important that for whatever you're doing in your offline meetup, you need to consider contingencies. So it's also contingencies like maybe having like a backup speaker, because there's been events where the speaker is late or doesn't show up, and in the end, you've organized all these people and they've come and all of that, and then the person doesn't show up. So you may structure your meetup in a way that maybe outside of the main speaker, there's also like another speaker or someone who can drive the conversation, who's just like on standby. And one of the best things that we discovered that this was an opportunity to give like community members to also showcase some of their skills and knowledge, right? So you say, oh, hey, Isaac, come through. I saw that you wrote this article about React Native or la 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 la. Can you give like a presentation? So yeah, like small, such types of contingency planning. Yeah. So you've done your offline engagements plan, your online engagement plan. What's next, you may ask? So one thing I would like to, I'd like to speak on, well, this is the last part, partnerships, right? Again, like we were very fortunate enough to have Facebook as one of our backers. So in terms of like financial help, they could easily come through. But even with that, we also needed to like create or build partnerships. Not official, like, there's documents signed and all of that, just, word of mouth. Because again, we were very much discouraged against, having formal agreements with any entities because, yeah, again, Facebook still trying to ensure that there's no legal issues that come through that. So what are some of the things that we looked at, or some things that you need to consider when you're looking for partners? First thing is shared values, right? Not every partner that you find or potential partner needs to, you don't need to partner with everyone. You need to look out for people that have got shared values. So like, looking at it from the lens of like technology, right? You look at companies that are either like pushing the innovation, pushing themselves in the innovation space. Because with that, you know that they easily understand that if they give you a space, right, to host your meetup, they shouldn't say, oh, we've given you space, okay, you pay for it, right? Because again, you're a community, you don't have money, right? They need to understand that this is part of the larger ecosystem, right? If we can get as many developers, right, or build as many communities of developers, in the end, if they're in the computer industry or the tech industry, maybe 5 years from now or 2 years from now, these very people that are coming to that meetup will say, oh, I once went for a meetup at MTN or not MTN or Airtel and that. And I met this really cool person from that organization and we had a conversation. Oh yeah, let me apply, all of that. So it's like some of the benefits are not immediate. They're more in the long term. So you need to look for companies that have that foresight. Because trust me, some of the conversations that we have had, you get with people, they promise you to give you a space. And then once you start with the nitty-gritties, it becomes ugly. There's all of these, no, you need to sign NDAs and you're like, and we've had to walk away. Like, we've had to walk away from, some of the biggest banks in Zambia, because in the end, their values don't align with our values. Right? So when building partnerships, you need to really consider that. Do they have shared values? So maybe you may ask, it's like, then how do I sort of like find these possible partners? You need to monitor industry activities. So industry activities is like, what company is hosting hackathons, right? What company is, advertising for, developer opportunities? What company is talking about this, And then from there, you get to now see how you can easily leverage that direction that they're going in, right? So it's like, monitoring your LinkedIn and all of that, just trying to see who's good in that space. And this been very successful in that one of the most successful meetups that we've had was, we had the MTN mobile money hackathon. I think that was should be November 2019, right? And it literally just came out of nowhere. There was no actual signings between us as a community and MTN. It was literally, oh, MTN announces. By the way, I'm no affiliation. I'm not promoting MTN at all. It's just a good example. Yeah. So we saw, and they posted that, oh, they're calling developers to build for their mobile money, and we're like, okay, since they're not going to have an actual hackathon, like a physical meetup or anything like that, we are going to basically like host a meetup and bring together people and have someone who's like has got knowledge about, like, has worked with the mobile money APIs, has done this, and we organized it independently of them. And in the end, what happened is that they reached out, and they're like, okay, how can we help out? They had their people from the mobile money thing who came to share and all of that. And you see, those are the synergies that happen when you have that like industry focused approach. The third point on this is building networks. When you're managing a community, again, it's all about networking, right? You need to get comfortable with the idea that most of the times you have to talk to people, and not just people within your community, but beyond the community, right? So it's networking, it's smiling and waving. Lord knows how many times we had to do that. And from there, you get to know who's who. You get to know who's who in the industry. even when you go to an event, create like a connection with some of the people there, right? Have conversations, and again, it has to be genuine. For some of the things that, like, for me personally, that I've always done within the community is like every time we go to these, like, we were fortunate enough to go on these meetings with like other leads. You just create like a rapport with all of that, and in the end, when you come back, it was easy to like just say, hey, thanks for, it was great seeing you in blah 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 blah. We're running this type of event, and I saw that you're an expert on this. Would you like to speak? And in the end, especially during the COVID times, right, would have speakers coming in from Morocco, from Berlin, from Kenya, from all of that. So again, building a network really helps, and not just within your community, but also like your career as well. Because in the end, you also, as a community lead, you're also a career person. The last point that I want to stress before I close out is, sure, don't tell. It's so easy to, what do I mean by this? People only gravitate to people that are doing, that people see are actually doing things, right? Especially in the framework of building partnerships. Most of the people that you talk to, they don't know you. They haven't heard of your little community. But if you try to if you try to go and create partnerships, they will not see, they'll be like, okay, what's our value in this, right? What's the end goal? So for us, we were able to like exist without, okay, again, I'll be very cautious to state this again. We were, in terms of like the finance aspect, we had Facebook. So I guess that was like a little bit of a comfort on our, no, well, it was a comfort on our end. But we were able to sort of like go through all this without, seeking major partnerships. But even with that, we still needed something to show for. So when we went, to talk to potential partners. So because of like this track record of all these meetups and all of that, we were able to sort of like be, when you have that conversation, people will look at you and like, yeah, I know you. You guys are doing this. So do the work and let that work speak for you. The other last thing, though it's not in the presentation, that I just wanted to talk about is leverage your community members for things, right? So like certain things, things like graphics, helping out set up the event, leverage your community members. And through that, it really also helps create sort of like a continuity plan or path for you. Because in the end, when you're ready to step off, it's so easy for them to, carry the works, because they've already known how you function as the community. And other thing is branding. How you brand your community also matters. This is something that we learned, right? So we were very careful in terms of like how we branded our community. What's the wording? What's the imagery? How you're going to, all of that. And if there's someone who's like very good at that within the community, leverage them off, because in the end, how you showcase your community to the rest of the world really adds an impact. So yeah, so these are some of the things that we've learned managing developer circles for the last 5 years. So thank you for this opportunity, and I can open up. I will take it back to George for the rest of the event. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mbuyu, for the presentation and also for the shared experience. I don't want to use heavy words like presentation. This was a story, and you shared with us with so much insight. I would like to say I wanted to do like a quick Q&A session. Maybe I'll just allow for at least maybe looking at time, we'll just allow for maybe, okay. I'll just allow for maybe 4 people to ask questions. And then also, like I mentioned, that we have we have guests on the call as well from Propel that will also talk about the Propel initiative, and hopefully that maybe you looking at what we mentioned around partnerships, which would be good as well to look into. So it's also a timely subject as well. Yes, I'll just allow for 2, 3. Okay, yeah, the hands are buzzing. Okay, fine. We'll go through order. Then we'll go with Elijah, and then we'll go with so we'll go through order, Alinani, then Elijah. But feel free to ask a question. Rhoda?
Thanks, George. Thanks, Mbuyu, for the insightful presentation. I have a question on your finances. So I don't know. First of all, I'd like for you to share the presentation afterwards. But the finances in terms of your community budget, I'm curious to know how they look like, especially when you didn't have sponsors. And afterwards, like are there certain things that you used to account for in your budget that were constant for before and after?
Okay, thank you. George, are you like queuing up the questions, or?
You can answer that one. Then I will. Okay, maybe we can answer that one. Then we'll get into the next one.
Okay. Very good question. So, what are some of the things to consider when you're coming up with like a budget? So we had a minimum spend. I think it was. Well, I can share this information. At that time, it was for every meetup you could spend like $300. So I think at that yeah, you can spend like $300. So some of the things that we would spend that on were and again, at that time the dollar rate should have been like 10. 10, so that's like 3,000 kwacha. So things that that are always constant, we would buy snacks for people, and we would also print out T-shirts. But that was like during the first initial period of the community, because again, when you're trying to attract people, right? Developers like goodies, right? Small goodies here and there and there. So would like try to provide all of that. But as we grew, we had to rethink that approach. And because in the end, you want people to find value. You want people to find value in the community, just for the fact that it exists and it's sharing this type of information, right? You don't want people in the long run to always just come there for the T-shirts. So we had to scrape it. And in replacement of that, what we did was we made our meetups very like of value, right? So like, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had to make our meetups of high value so that people can just come out of their own intuition without any, anything to attract them. So t-shirts and snacks are the things to consider. Yeah.
Aninani is asking, how did you pick a name for your community? Then Elijah, you can go ahead and ask a question.
I'm not sure if so. Again, for us, we were under the umbrella of the developer circles thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Community.
Sorry for budging in, George. Mbuyu, probably just to rephrase, how would you advise someone who's trying to pick a name? Because I know you guys already had a name to go with, but what, from your experience, what advice would you give when picking a name for the community?
So some of the things that I've seen within the industry when it comes to like picking names for your community, other people center around a specific technology. So you find like, say for example, like I've seen maybe like React Lusaka, right? So the technology and then the location. Yeah, I believe for you, like you're in the cyberspace. So it has to immediately when someone hears that name, they have to connect it to say, okay, it's a community for people who are passionate about this. So your name has to be catchy. Though I would say in our case, we ended up having to explain what we do quite a lot because the name itself was okay. It would say developer circle, but people will still not get it. So to remove that, the name has to be catchy and instantly identifying a set of people that should belong to it. I'm using should because, again, the community is for everyone. So in your case, you need a name that easily identifies the people that or what you're going to be talking about. I've seen communities like Laravel, Zambia, so already from that you can see like, oh, immediately anyone who's like a Laravel enthusiast, this is the community for them. So yeah, those are some of the things that I can say.
Hey Mbuyu, thank you for the great
Hey, Elijah.
presentation. It was very insightful. I just wanted to find out how you guys go about conflict resolution, both in situations of decision making when there's a particular path different parties want to go, and in maybe a more interpersonal way if there's like some interpersonal issues. So yeah, conflict resolution.
Great question. So first of all, what in my experience, what really helped our community is that we were friends, or we are friends. So we could, even if there's like there's an issue, we could see each other from the lens of friendship first, right? So that really helped us. But then there was also like there would be scenarios where we needed to sort of like put our foot down. So it helps if, as part of your culture modeling for your community, you also have code of conduct for your your leadership team, right? Right. So, you know, how you can't have people. I remember we used to have one of our colleagues, and unfortunately, things didn't pan out well, and we had to let him go simply because he wasn't fulfilling some of his obligations, right? So your code of conduct, be it written, be something that you share, really helps you out in that situation, because then you're not saying, okay, I have decided to kick you out of the community or be part of the leadership team. It's you have breached these the terms of or the culture or the guidelines. Therefore, you cannot be part of that. So it really helps out, and that's why culture is like very important to emphasize and stress. So yeah, in such a case, yeah, your code of conduct should be the first thing that you should have in place.
Thanks, Mbuyu.
Sure.
We're speaking to that as well. Since you spoke so much, you're speaking around the leadership perspective. How about the member perspective?
Oh, yeah. So for the member perspective, so if any of the breaches in terms of like guidelines, again, we like right now, I can easily pull up the DevC membership code of conduct. It's already there. So within, we also see people from that lens, right? To say, okay, maybe for example, some of the things that we've had to let, or people we banned online from our group, were people that were sharing, you know, misogynistic content, and the good thing with the platform that we're using is that if someone shares content that breaches the code of conduct, you can easily ban them and even share the specific reason why you're banning them, to say you breached this part of the community. So that's how we were managing the conflict aspect. If it's conflict between members and it happens away from the community, that's not really our job. But if it's happening either online or physical meetup, then we just say, you are not going to attend any of our meetups. And that's, yeah, so that's how we would manage them.